Go.
Go. Go where?
Where do you want?
Hi everybody, happy Good Friday. Don't forget, tell somebody today what Good Friday means. And if you don't know what Good Friday means, I will explain it again for you. Good Friday is the day Jesus was hung on the cross and died for our sins. And for years I thought, why is it called Good Friday? Because Jesus, suffered and went through a horrible ordeal, which you'll see today when I'm reading, and even more so than what's written. But then I thought, and it's because Jesus done a good thing for us. He done a good thing, giving up his life for our sins, so that we, through him, could be saved and go to heaven when we pass away, in paradise for eternity. And you'll see one of the people that's hung beside him gets to go to paradise. Okay, I'm going to read Luke chapter 22, verse 54, and then Luke 23, verse 12, and then I'm going to go to tomorrow's because I'm putting them together, and read Luke 23, 13 through 43. So we'll get through the crucifixion. Okay, so let's begin. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. They took Jesus away, the guards and stuff. Peter followed at a distance. He didn't know Peter, well, Jesus knew Peter was following, but nobody else knew Peter was following, because when Jesus got arrested, all the disciples fled like Jesus said they would, including Peter, but Peter's following at a distance to see what happens. And remember, Jesus told Peter that he would deny him 3 times before the rooster crowed, and Peter said, "No, I will not, Lord. I will die for you if I have to." But like I said, don't judge Peter, because you yourself can say that you would not have done that, but until you're in that situation, that's why you shouldn't judge anybody, because you can always say, they shouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have done that, or they should have done that, because you don't know how you would truly be unless you're in that situation and the things that's coming and that you got to face and that the fears are coming and everything. So please don't judge anyone, because you don't know what they're truly going through unless you go through it yourself. And remember, everybody's different. Peter followed at a distance, and when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in a firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with Jesus." But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You're also one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy, who hit you?" And they said many other insulting things to him. They spit on him, they hit him, they flogged him. Nobody tried to help. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Messiah," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do you need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted, "He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here." On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. Now see, Pilate, the governor, Pontius Pilate, really does not want to harm Jesus. He wants them to let him go. And later on, he really does not want to harm Jesus because his wife tells Pilate, Pilate's wife tells him, "Don't have anything to do with this man because I have suffered in a dream because of him." She knew there was something very special about Jesus and they not to do anything bad to him. And Pilate didn't want to. You'll see. You'll see. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased, because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sorts. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave no answers. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. Jesus went through that day. Not one person tried to help. But that was the way it was supposed to be. That's the way it was. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. Jesus used to call Herod the fox because I guess Herod was like, fox back then they said kind of meant like a wimp, because he would say things but not like really want to do anything about it or something. It's something I read. It's a long story. Like he wouldn't want to fight somebody if he was like running his mouth about him and then came up to him, he wouldn't do anything. He was a fox, a sly fox, and he was a troublemaker. Okay, so we're back at Pilate again. Pilate's going to be saddened by this, especially when his wife has a talk with him. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers of the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him and then release him," which means they was going to flog him. But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us! Barabbas has been thrown into the prison for an insurrection to the city, and he was a murderer." They wanted him released and Jesus put to death, because it was the custom then, at that time, to release a prisoner. I'm not sure if it's going to get to Pilate's wife. I know it was in Matthew. You know, some of them don't tell all of it. I don't think it's going to tell here about Pilate's wife telling him the dream. But it's in Matthew. Okay. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished, then release him." But with loud shouts they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. But, like you'd read in Matthew, because it's not telling the whole story, you gotta, each book is a little bit different. They're saying the same things, but they're leaving out some parts. Matthew will say in that book that Pilate gave the people what they wanted to be able to kill Jesus, but he said he's washing his hands of it. He put his hands in water and washed them off and said he was washing his hands of it. Jesus' death was not on his hands. Okay. But the loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, Barabbas. The murderer was released, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. As the soldiers led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. Because at that time, they made Jesus try to carry the cross, but Jesus kept falling. He was too weak. He couldn't carry the cross. So they got Simon out of the crowd and had him carry Jesus' cross. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Two would have been Mary, his mother, and Mary Magdalene. Jesus had other women followers as well. I think Joanne was one. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children." See, even then, Jesus was not thinking of himself, but of everyone else. "For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the childless women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and the hills, 'Cover us.' For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" Two other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, Golgotha, it's the place of the skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar, trying to be smart alecks, thinking they're funny, and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above Jesus' head, above him, which read, "This is the King of the Jews." They thought that was being smart alecks, because they really didn't believe Jesus was the King of the Jews, that's why they put that up there. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." And that's where it stops here, but then a little bit later after this, 3 o'clock, Jesus gave up his spirit and died on the cross. And to make sure he was dead, they jabbed a sword into his side, pierced his side. Blood and water came out. So, Sunday, God willing, we will read on from here to Jesus's resurrection, which is why we celebrate Easter. So let me get the prayer requests out, guys. We have a few more people added, unfortunately, to the prayer list. And I'll go through and tell everybody why. Luke Boggs, he's only 11. He's been having trouble. Every time he eats, he says it feels like it gets stuck, so he hasn't been eating. They diagnosed him with GERD. Said he had a bunch of gas pockets in his throat, but I'm not sure if they done the scope or not, because he was supposed to have that done on the 25th, so I'm not sure if he's still having that done or not. I'm hoping that all it is GERD. Because his grandma had it, and hers was so bad she had to have surgery because it ate a hole in her esophagus. Please pray that his don't get that bad if it's what it is, and pray that there's nothing else wrong with him more serious. Please pray for Zach Kirby. He's only in his 30s. He has 2 little small kids and a fiance, and he's dying of cancer. Oh, are we doing good? We gotta check the time, guys. Please pray for Elizabeth Jeffries. She is 80 years old. She's one of our friends here, and she's got cancer on her nose, plus other health problems. Please pray for Judy Osborne. She has cancer really bad as well. Please pray for Barb Post. She's home now and doing better. I want to pray she stays that way. Please pray for Linda Thacker. I heard her daughter told me she's doing a little better and is home again. Please pray for her daughter April Thacker. She's got chronic illnesses. Please pray for Cindy Welsh, my aunt. She's still sick, bronchitis, and possibly pneumonia. And now she's feeling dizzy, having dizzy spells. Please pray for Michael Cairns. He has Crohn's disease, really bad, and he suffers every day with it, with anybody that's got Crohn's or a chronic illness knows, and it's not fun. Plus, pray for Michael, because for his infusions, it's $4,000, and they can't get no financial help. Please pray that they're able to get some kind of financial help to help them pay for that. He's really, really worried about it. Because if he don't get it paid for, I don't know if they will even do any more infusions. I don't know. Because my cousin, he was sick and went to the doctor, and the doctor sent him to Circleville to get blood work, and they wouldn't even do the blood work because they said you still owe $800 at, another doctor for tests he had done. So they wouldn't even see him for the blood work. So I pray that doesn't happen to Mike. Please pray that he gets help paying that bill. Please pray for Sherman Crabtree. He's got chronic illnesses, and he's always hurting and having trouble with things. His arm's still hurting. Our doctor told him he hurt his bicep, so his arm's really been hurting a lot. Please pray for my niece, Abby Myers. She just came home from work today, really sick. I thought she just had a migraine, because Mom said she had a really bad headache, and, she was throwing up, and all the symptoms of a migraine, because I had to take 2 migraine shots yesterday and a migraine shot today. So Abby and I both get migraines really bad, but then Mom said her stomach was cramping and other things, so I think she's got something that's going around like everybody else is getting. Please pray for my sister Shelly Turner. Somehow she threw out her back yesterday and blue discs in her back, and she couldn't walk, and now she's in the hospital and they might be doing surgery. Please pray for my sister Melody Stanley and her husband Eric Stanley. They're having a lot of trouble with their marriage and need a lot of prayer to fix it. They're not sure whether they're going to break up or stay together, but my sister they need a lot of prayer right now for their marriage. Okay, guys, that is everybody. Oh, and please pray for my Aunt Dora Carper. She's right here. How did I skip her? Please pray for my Aunt Dora Carper. Her rib had popped out here a few days ago, and she went and got it put back in, and they cracked her neck too, adjusted it, and it still was hurting, so she had to go back and everything. So she's still really sore, so please pray that it stays in and that she gets to feeling better. Alright guys, that is everybody for today. God willing, we won't have any more. We don't want to see anybody on the prayer list, you know, because that means something's wrong with them, and that's why they need prayer. We don't want to see that. The less on the prayer list, the better. But I hope you guys have a wonderful Good Friday, and please, again, tell somebody, anybody, especially your children, what Good Friday and Easter really mean. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Let's bring these souls to Jesus, and God willing, we'll see you guys again tomorrow with another Bible reading. Bye guys. God bless.